There. Hi, Rebecca. How are you doing?
Hello.
So, welcome to Rooster and Hen Resources podcast again. I'm with our Chief Education Officer, Rebecca Rule, who started the organization. And this podcast is still forming, but we are trying to create conversations and a space to talk about social emotional learning with children and art making and processing grief. Not strictly grief, but really, I think the organization's role is to help families work through hard things together, big or small. And so we would like to talk today about a recent conference that Rebecca was able to go to and what are some of the things that she was able to express and discuss and teach other caregivers in the industry, other teachers, and I'm sure many more social emotional learning professionals. Um,
So I just came back from Idaho, Boise, and Twin Falls. So we did the same conference in both places. So basically repeated. And I was invited by this organization called Because Kids Grieve. And they do this bereavement conference for professionals in the area to get their continuing ed credits, especially social workers. And this year, Mike Seward, who's the board president, invited me. And we actually met at a different conference at the NACG, the National Alliance for Children's Grief. And he came to one of my seminars on helping kids make their own stories, make their own books. And then we ended up at the same workshop and sat next to each other to visit someone else. So it was great getting to get to know him more, meeting his wife, meeting his team. So the topic was grief in every language, colon, because we always need a subtitle. In all these helper things we do, we always need a subtitle, colon, hands-on tools to reach the whole child. So I think like my motivation on that topic is to integrate what we know as, say, diverse learning styles in the classroom. So, whether you're a visual learner, an auditory learner, a kinesthetic learner, or whether you're in hybrid or a blend, that affects how you understand information. And that also might affect how you communicate and express your feelings and information. So, in the realm of grief support, that's really important because in the time that we have with the kids and their families, it's important that they feel seen, they feel heard, and they feel like they can engage, right? So, the folks that came to the conference included social workers, child life specialists, mental health professionals, educators, school counselors, grief group coordinators, or grief group leaders. So everyone has sort of a set time, maybe with certain kids, maybe weekly or whatever their frequency is. But with that set time, you want to make the most of it. So that's sort of how we approach the 2 days. And because it's me, I know that whatever learning style the facilitator has, we tend to sort of lean on that learning style, right? So for me, it's like artsy, it's creative, and it's playful. But alongside that, it's knowing our own sort of preference bias, but also seeing who is out there and what the common denominator is. So we talked a lot about using play and using creativity because for kids, that's what kids want to do. Play in all of its forms. They want to play. And grief training was very playful. And maybe people are like, oh my goodness, it's grief training. Isn't it sad? Everyone's hugging and crying and tissues everywhere. I mean, there's a time and place for that, but it's also really fun. So we can make grief training fun. So I went into the the cognitive development and social emotional development of kids over their ages because they process differently. And then I integrated that with diverse learning styles to see how we could more, I guess, more creatively approach the kids in ways that feel more casual, feel less serious, especially for families, feel less scary, and definitely just overall
Mm.
more approachable. So that's what we did.
Do you mind me asking what your learning style is? Mm-hmm.
Mine. So I made this survey. So in growing up, we had like these magazines that ask like, what kind of friend are you? How great of a friend are you? And if of course, if you answer mostly C's, it would be you're the most flexible friend ever. So I thought that was fun. And because I'm trying to elicit the child in all of the attendees, we talked a lot about our favorite childhood games, childhood toys, and memories like that. So we know and can get back to that
Mm-hmm.
place where learning was fun. So I made this quiz and then everybody took it. I am mostly a
Mm-hmm.
visual learner, but I am a very hybrid learner. So visual learning is you learn and communicate and express through what you see. So, for example, diagrams, pictures, or color coded things are really helpful in my learning. And I do like to present things that way. And I do like remember like books based on their covers, not necessarily or title. Um, so I would say I'm that. And hybrid kind of means you might change your learning style depending on the situation. Auditory is you learn and express through what you hear. So you would tend to prefer like podcasts, um, lectures, discussions, things like that, and maybe audiobooks. Um, Kinesthetic learning is you
Mm-hmm.
learn best by doing. And I'm very much that as well. Um, and I feel um, like hands-on demonstrations or being able to roll your sleeves up and do it alongside the teacher or facilitator is also how I best learn, which is why I think I'm a hybrid. But what I wanted to bring out too is there's a blend. So especially when you're in times of stress or when you're in times of grief, then your learning style could change like in and out. Um, because things are so different. Maybe you're on such high alert or your brain feels so foggy or griefy that it, it kind of reroutes itself and redirects itself. Um, but that's really me. Like I definitely learn most well visually and kinesthetically. Um, but if it's auditory, I learn best when it's a conversation, when there's
Mm-hmm.
like a dialogue, when I get
Mm-hmm.
to ask, when I get to be with that person and talk about it. So yeah. How about you? You didn't
Oh,
take the
I
survey.
know it already. Because I've had this in our pedagogy class during undergrad, and I was kind of baffled by it actually. So the pianist in me, it's a hybrid of all three, really. Over the years, I came to grips with it, but I think predominantly kinesthetic because the kinesthetic keeps me, I think that's why I like baking because I'm tactile and constantly using my hands and pretty zoned in when I'm just kind of working with my hands. And it's a, I'm not always spatially aware, but it's the thing that zones me into being spatially aware as well. And that's the pianist side, but because pianists also classically trained ones are very visual and audio kind of centered. I think all three of them working together is the best scenario where I'm the most alert. But if I had to choose in the context of reading, listening to audiobooks is actually the better thing, and listening whilst doing something. So that's still that kinesthetic
Mm,
aspect happening. Whereas if I'm, say, driving on my commute, it helps me to keep focus on both things. And then after listening to the book, then visually, when I read the book, it's less stressful. Like I can kind of correlate what I hear in my brain to like what is being textually laid out on the page. But yeah, I think any sort of multimedia experience is helpful for me, even as an artist. I actually do remember visual components, but probably not as aware as my visually centered learners, where they just notice every detail pretty, and their photographic memory is really strong. I don't have
Definitely.
that level of detail or memory photographically. So I think that's where I, in my adulthood, adjusted my life and my productivity to surround that learning style, because sitting in lectures growing up and classrooms, like I would fall asleep or get distracted. I just could not. I was like a,
I'm always doodling. I'm
yeah,
always doodling. I'm drawing the entire thing that you're talking
interesting.
about.
I was either trying to doodle or take notes, or at one point I was trying to eat lunch while I was in class in college just to keep awake, or else I just couldn't. But it is really doing it afterward, doing the problem several times afterward, that I was like, oh, now I understand what you're saying, because I've worked out the
Right.
parts inside of the problem or whatever. And
Right. Right. And I think that brings me to the point or the objective of why I did the survey anyway, because we have so many adults trying to
mm-hmm,
help kids, right? Teachers included,
mm-hmm,
educators included, caregivers, aunties, social workers, etc. All these adult helpers. But all of us span different generations
mm-hmm,
and different ages. But if we think about, like, not all of us are one type of learner, but then if we think about generations ago of teaching, there was only
right,
one teaching style.
exactly.
Like, irrelevant to what learning style you are, the word learning style wasn't even relevant or talked about because you just did what the teacher told. So if the teacher happened to be very lecture driven, then that's what you got. If the teacher happened to be very experience
Right.
driven, that's just what you got. Right. And I think for a lot of our older generations, it's much more traditional how they went to school. So adults said something, the
Mm-hmm,
kids obeyed. You were told to talk, then you talked. So feelings and all those softer things weren't highly
mm-hmm,
tolerated in manager classroom. So I brought that up to a room full of helpers. Each session we have about 35 attendees because we really are affected and groomed by how we were taught. And then we might not even understand or recognize the impact it has on how we teach today and the expectations we have, right? So, or even know that we have a different learning style. And I think like in, the modern day, like right now, contemporary teaching, we understand that kids have a lot of different needs, special needs included, and kids have all abilities and diverse abilities, right? But yet, I think when we look at how we support outside of the school, we might not have the same lens because in school, there's very specific academic learning standards you must achieve, whether you master them or you expose them. But in grief support, for example, those achievements and those milestones are not exact and they shouldn't be. And how we approach kids can be so many different ways. So I think the more we're able to step outside of our comfort zone in experiencing what other kids might need to experience, then the more empathetic we are, and even how information is relayed to them. Like, not everybody can relate to writing, not everybody can relate to music, not everybody can relate to listening to a story, but you have to find a way to read the story, to incorporate the storytelling, to add in musicality in a way that touches upon every kind of learner, not 100% of the time, but some of the time, so that everyone feels like they can engage in some
yeah.
form or fashion. And it's like a like it's not a wake up call, but it's definitely a reminder to us, the adult helpers, like, Well, yeah, I'm super artsy in my own things. So if I make everything so artsy, it might ostracize
Yeah, who
certain
need more
families or certain people.
structural learning. Yeah.
Right. So it's all about, like building the empathy, you know what I mean? So it was fun. It was fun learning that. And then I did a bunch of activities to kind of push ourselves out of our comfort zone, but then also reel it back in. So we did a rhythm one where in like percussion and drumming, we have an exercise called call and answer, right? So if I have a beat, I would make the beat. I'm the caller, and if you're the answer, you're
Hmm.
the beat. And then underlying there might be like a bass rhythm. And it was so fun. The instruments we used were like our laps,
Great.
right? And the table,
Yeah.
and then our hands, and then our voice. And it was really fun because like in this conference room, this auditorium in a hospital, we were doing this. We're like do 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 da 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 do 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 da da da
Oh,
da do
that's so fun.
do do. And then like the caller would even like say words like "ow," and then in rhythm, the responders would go "ow," or like "I am beautiful," and then "I
Beautiful.
am
Yeah.
beautiful." Yeah, and the whole like point of it is that it's really teaching
Hmm.
active listening, right? It can teach
Yeah.
rhythm, definitely, but it's really teaching to listening because
Right.
you have to hear it in beat and repeat it. And it was also an analogy to us being reflective
Right.
listeners as adults, especially adults who care for kids who might be having a hard time, who might be feeling sad. A very natural response for adults is to cheer them up or to feel the pain, right? Feel bad to see a child suffer. So, and naturally, if especially in caregiving, if a child goes, "Oh, I had such a bummer day," naturally, you're like, "Really? You had a bummer day? Like, we went to the zoo, you had your favorite lunch, even ice cream. That was a bummer day." So that's not reflective listening and it doesn't affirm what the child said. Versus if you do like that call and answer exercise in like a drumming troupe or a percussion group, you go, "I had a bummer day." They reflect, "Oh, you had a bummer day? Yeah, it was horrible." It's like, "Oh, you had a bummer day and it was horrible. That sucks." So, like, the child knows you're not dismissing anything. You're not adding judgment to anything. You're not trying to like fix them out or debate them out of feeling that way, overly cheering them up.
Yeah. It's
Maybe
like a
they don't want to be cheered up at
minimization
all.
of that moment. Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So it was really fun. Some of the attendees are like, "We had to concentrate so much just to make sure we're on
Oh, that's
beat."
so funny.
And I'm like, the kids
No,
aren't
they
gonna
don't.
care as much. We
Yeah.
care. They just like to be the
Right.
one
Right.
making
Right.
the noise. They like to be the one
Right. Right.
responding with the noise, right? Like, what? I get to make all the
Yeah.
noise I
Yeah.
want, and someone's gonna repeat. And you could even do, hand motions and smooths with it. So we had so much fun that the next door conference room
Oh,
told us to
that's
tone it
really
down.
funny. You set the bar high.
I don't
That's
know, the
funny.
volume too high, maybe like
Yeah,
too high, but
that's
it was
like
really
really
fun.
interesting
It was really
on the
fun.
music that is kinesthetic too, because you're like tapping, you're like, um, I was, and you know about this, I served as a teaching artist at I'm just gonna call it a grief camp very briefly, with
Yeah.
kids all around.
I I feel like you might need to like talk about what grief camp is because
Yeah.
not everyone knows what
Okay,
a grief
so this
camp is.
program, I'm not gonna say what program it is just to keep it obscure,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
essentially the requirement for this camp was that uh you have had experienced one parent passing away in your life. And so we had students from all over the Chicagoland area, from many different neighborhoods, many different socioeconomic backgrounds coming together in this camp. And it was to provide them a safe artistic environment to process that and through creative acts and community. And as them one of the resident music teaching artists, I had a strong educational component of like teaching quarter notes and half notes and all those things and actually labeling rhythms even in fun ways, but you still were learning your 16th notes. Pomegranate,
Mhm.
pomegranate, apple, apple, things like that. That's like kind of what I have been learning. But we kind of scrapped all of that out the door and we went with more of the sorts of activities that you're talking about because it's a juxtaposition between are you trying to achieve something in this moment or are you trying to help them have fun and process and just like they're learning
Yeah,
rhythm, but they're not learning rhythm, and it's just that's not
that's
the
not the
objective.
objective.
And they
That's not the
naturally pick it up because they're listeners. And, I have people from different backgrounds with different exposures to different types of art forms. So it's not to like
Mhm.
create an environment where they're comparing and contrasting who's better at what than whatever else too. Um, so I mean, some of the older kids that we had probably were a little bit more aware of whether they were good at dancing or not good at dancing or like those kinds of things. But to set up an environment where anyone can pick up anything and it was encouraged that anyone can pick up anything, I think it was interesting for you to witness as adults doing the activity in the room with you that they're a little bit conscious and cognitively conscious about what's happening and being like, I need to keep on beat together. But then when they let go, they are more empathetically like a child who's a little bit oblivious to the educational components and are just like, this is fun and this feels safe. And they might not be able to label why, except when they're 10 and over, but like there's like this was good and just kind of transporting yourself back into that little body and being like, oh, this is what they need from me, even though I can hide all of the again the SEL components in the back. They just need to naturally receive and participate. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's like support in disguise. Like we were talking a lot about like support in disguise. Kids will be kids, and then when they're young, all the way up to like teenagers, as they become older, they are more self-conscious, right? They're more self-conscious of what people might think about them. What do they look like? Do I belong? My friends
Mm,
think I'm weird, right? And when you're a little bit younger, you're not as aware of these markers of social status or
yeah,
markers of
that's
acceptance in
true.
a group, right? But it starts to matter a lot more. And that's also why I brought in that part too, because we can't solely talk about learning style in silo because nothing
You're right.
works in
Perfect. That's
isolation
great.
and just
Yeah,
in just
right.
in just life, right? So like you might be a visual learner, you might be a kinesthetic learner, but you're also now entering your teens. And that's very different from a visual learner and a kinesthetic learner
Yeah,
who is 6 years old.
precisely.
So the things that you have to really think about in preparation, it is different because sometimes you don't have a specific age. A lot of times you might because it's easier, but I argue that in life, that's not how it works. It works that way in schools, but it doesn't work that way in families and in communities. You're with multi ages
Yes.
all the time, and different generations all the time. So the challenge in training was how do we appeal
Yeah.
to all of them? Because even, and that's the motivation also of Brewster and Henry Resources. Now that you bring up Grief Camp, because like at Grief Camp, it is oftentimes a wonderful experience. Sometimes it's a week long, sometimes a
Hmm.
sleepover camp, sometimes it's day camp, whatever. But it's this wonderful experience of this extended period of time where you're with other kids who also had someone
Yeah.
in their life die so that you know exactly you're not alone because you see
Yeah.
them right there. You see them there and they're with you. And all the activities, everyone is so supportive and encouraging. you learn the language, you learn the dynamics, you learn how to cope, you learn how to help yourself, you learn how to support other people. All of that happens right there, right? But here's the thing, when the kids go back home, who's
Mm-hmm.
there? The other campers are no longer there. That's another goodbye, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until the next time. If there's be a next time if you get to go again. Some grief camps are, you know, able to accommodate repeat attendees, some cannot accommodate. But then what happens now at home? The caregivers might not have that language. The caregivers have no idea what
Yeah.
activities you're talking about or doing. They might not
Right.
feel as
Oh,
safe,
that's
right?
so true.
Oh, how so empowering to do it at home now with like all your siblings and your cousins and your grandma and your auntie and whoever else might be at home, right? Or maybe you have a family culture where feelings
Yeah.
aren't safe to talk about because
Yeah.
it's familiar and it's not common or it's
Yeah.
taboo, whatever it is. So that's really why Rooster and Hen resources exists, to create resources to empower the communities themselves. And it's really to help the helpers, because the natural helpers in a child's life is who they're going to have more long term. And if we empower those in the community and family to help themselves, the trust is already built there. And that the knowledge and the wealth of knowledge stays within, where there are many things like grief camp that needs to be outsourced, right? Not every family can like just throw a camp for themselves or for their community. But then don't, don't forget to bring in the caregivers, bring in the adults in the kids' lives. But that is harder to do because it's not as straightforward, right? So that was the challenge and that was the invitation during training. Like, how can we make it support in disguise? Because so many adults would never access services. Like, if you went to, a Grief and You meeting, would you go? I wouldn't go because I'm not prepared or even want to talk about my grief with other people. Or perhaps I think I'm over it. It's been 5 years. I should be over it by now. Um, but a lot of times, we realize grief is not something we get over, is something we move forward from and carry with us, right? So there's so much awareness and education that's needed for our caregivers, our families, our communities, but we almost have to do it in, not not fake it, but in a way where it's not so strict and not so rigid, because it can appear too serious. It can appear too
Yeah.
scary. So I was like talking about, instead of, calling it,
Grief
I don't
camp.
know, not everyone's grief camp. Or maybe like instead of calling it a grief meeting, could we call it a de-stress meeting, right? I was just sharing about how I was helping a group of seniors at a senior club in a community here in Chicago, a Chinatown community, and we speak Chinese. And even already there, you have barriers,
Yes. So
right?
many.
You have barriers to what you translate, how you translate it, what the words mean in a different language. Culturally, grief isn't talked about in the Chinese culture. There's not even like an exact word to translate it. And then are the seniors going to come to something that's called grief? And probably not. But we all know they're experiencing it. We all know they're seeing their friends get ill, get sick, pass away. We know they're seeing violence on the streets and they're scared to
Mm-hmm.
go outside. We know the grief stories because many of them immigrated here 50, 60 years ago, 40 years ago. There's so much loss, but it's not common to talk about it. So, how do we get, you know, the seniors to come to something and enjoy and like it and find it beneficial without scaring them off with the name of the gathering, right? So instead of, Grief and You, what if it's, art with Miss Rebecca, ways to de-stress, which is completely true. We will be doing art with Miss Rebecca, and it is a way to
Wow.
de-stress. And how, like, what comes out of you making the art, whatever, I'm always, I'm always in the camp of whatever needs to come out will come as long as you feel safe. And whatever you don't feel like letting out, you won't, because you're going to protect it. But if we can create a meaningful outlet to express, so even if you're making the art and you don't say a word about it, you don't have to be verbal. It doesn't mean you didn't tell your story. like it came out somewhere somehow. And I was just sharing like different stories of the seniors who would paint and draw for the first time, and they would express things about their past that they never told other people because it needed to come out. And would you term that as grief support necessarily? Maybe, maybe not. But I was never explicit in asking, tell me your grief story. Tell me at this time when you felt lost, because it wasn't appropriate for that audience. Sometimes it is appropriate in many cases, especially if you're a grief counselor or grief therapist, and you might need to be very direct and explicit in understanding their case and their situation, right? But in our work at Rooster and Head, when we interact and engage with the community, it's not about that. It's more of meeting everyone where they are and walking alongside together, and then knowing that it's already such an unapproachable topic, grief. Let's make everything much more relaxed. So at least the process to the conversation is as approachable as possible. So I think a lot of attendees gave feedback and said, I realize I can consider not being so rigid, thinking I have to
Yeah.
do a grief group a certain way. And it was really encouraging, very eye-opening, and
Yeah.
a shift of how even like clinically we might be doing things, because Rooster and Hen Resources isn't clinical. We're not clinical. I'm not a certified therapist. I'm
Right.
not a licensed therapist, a licensed educator, but I'm not a therapist. But where I'm not clinical, I'm much more creative.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts. Just I'm still working out as an educator and as a lifelong learner, on someone who is socially emotionally aware of my own learning trauma and how I reflect that back
Yeah.
in my teaching styles. And I, just to give the audience perspective, I've done everything from early childhood music classes with babies to ESL and music classes with 60-year-olds. And I myself have been
Yeah.
in different cultural contexts learning abroad, but also here at home in American English settings, but also in like Chinese non-English settings. And there are so many barriers. And one light bulb moment for me, even, so, you know, if you're going to, I'm going to say this because I watch clips of like Fresh Off the Boat, and I think it's like a funny learning analogy, but like, you have the Chinese Learning Center, right? Where,
It's like
right, fresh off the
fresh
boat,
off.
and it's like very achievement oriented. A lot of parents put their kids in
Yeah.
Kumon or the CLC
Yes.
so that they can
Yes.
have educational support to academically achieve, right? So in right, they have an advantage. So even when you're in an art setting, music setting, it's very technique driven. And then I've also taught English to seniors and retired adults or 40s and over in Chinatown. And I used to be so upset that they didn't do their homework. Like, this is what's the point of me teaching you this if
You got upset at
yeah,
the
well,
grandmas and grandpas.
the funny thing was like I bumped into so where I taught was like in Chinatown, and then one time onto my other job all the way in Evanston teaching music. You can see the diversity in my life. I went to this massage place that two of my Chinese adult students were massage therapists there. And they were so excited to see me. So they're like, come in, come in, come in, come in. And then the male father of that couple was just asking me everything from like, have you eaten yet? Why aren't you married? Miss Wong, my biggest memory of you in ESL was the fact that you always yelled at us in Chinese, that we weren't diligent enough with our homework and we weren't paying attention. And it was like, I was like, oh, I was like,
Wow, that
I
feedback
know,
is
like this
harsh.
young adult Chinese American girl is scolding an older speaker about not doing her homework.
Ah,
And out
talk
of
about
like,
out of line,
yeah, right.
Grace.
That's, but
Very
he
out
thought
of
it was
line.
adorable because, I'm still this like feisty, tiny, petite woman. It was just trying to help them out and do her job.
Isn't it funny though when
N-
I don't know, maybe they grew up with
They
the same
did.
type of teaching, but when it's like flipped on them,
Yeah. They're like but
when it's like,
right.
no,
And I
but
think what I
that
should have done now looking back at what you're saying to me is I've also been at the Graham School of U of C in a memoir class with 60s and 70-year-old retired, predominantly Jewish educated folks who are writing their entire life story, which is very grief based, like the secrets that their family never released to them. And they never had written before. Some people, or they have, but not in a way that's literary like. And
yeah,
they're
yeah, I
just
understand what you
there
mean.
they're retired. They're just there to make friends and discover something new. And when I think about it, I could have conducted these ESL classes in a way that was like, if you want to talk to your friend in English, like, how can you do it in a fun way so that the bar is way lower of them actually using the English and actually using it because it's just expressing themselves so that they can make friends, right? In community.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
here
yeah,
thinking
yeah,
like, I
yeah.
mean, they're not getting grades. I don't know.
They need to they need to like
Right. We
do a
need to get through
speech. They
lesson
need to do
five. I need to get you a job in the, I'm here to help you in the workforce in America.
well, I'm curious. It sounds like you're a
Yeah,
product of your
right. So it,
upbringing.
it goes from, the Kumon and Chinese Learning Center to you.
To you being the coupon and
Yeah,
you being the learning center. You've like
embodying.
embodied. I was like explaining that and sharing that with like the attendees at the training. I was like, the energy you carry as a teacher, educator, facilitator, caregiver is the energy the children are
Mm.
going to know and absorb, right? So I don't know if you ever heard of analogies. Grief is like waves. So like waves, right? Grief comes in waves, right? So there's a bunch of analogies about a bunch of things. But I was explaining that it does come in waves, and for the adult to know that it comes in waves, we have to first be aware of that before we encounter our children, biological or otherwise, because then those waves kind of seep on and
Yeah.
overflow to them because there actually are waves. And until we know what that means, it really spills out. And then they're going to, receive that type of energy, receive those expectations that we might have in ourselves, receive all of that, and then
Yeah.
express it out too, right? And express it to themselves like, oh, yeah, it wasn't really a bummer day. It's not that big of a deal. It's just a goldfish. So what if a goldfish diagram was combined? So they're like dismissing themselves out of
Hmm.
their feelings versus like sitting in them. And I mean, you know me, and I guess these 70 people got to know me. It's just I start doing kinesthetic things. Don't think that artful things have to be sitting down, quiet, painting things and looking at mountains, because that's only one way of doing art, right? And
You're
art
right.
is so
Exactly.
many things. It isn't always visual, it's not
Yeah.
always painting. And there's so many of us adults and kids that say, I'm so bad at art. I'm so not creative. What I draw is horrible. It's ugly. I don't want to do this. You can have artful invitations without having to, you know, be able to paint like, flowers in detail. So it's like object lessons. So it's like movement, movement is also artful. Performing arts is artful. And so in this waves of grief, I was like talking about when you give that analogy to a non-swimmer like me, non-swimmer meaning I'm deathly afraid of water. And that's not even like pun intended. I'm deathly afraid of water because I almost drowned three
Mhm.
times in my childhood. And it's so scary to me to swim and to be in water. And so when you talk about, let's read a book about the waves of grief, I'm like,
That's
uh-uh,
terrifying. You know?
no, no. It's terrible. Like when you're saying like grief, which I'm already experiencing, and you're saying that that's what people experience when someone dies, is already like waves, which is already terrifying to me. It's like, I don't want to go through that experience. Or you have non-swimmers that might not feel deathly afraid, but they're just non-swimmers. So a lot of, inner city kids, like how I grew up, they don't have access to swimming pools, they don't have access to the lake. So being in a wave setting is not relatable. So what does even a wave feel like? If they've never been in a wave pool, they haven't been in a lake, they've never been in an ocean, like how will they know what waves do? They won't, right? Which is why a lot of us don't want to swim either, because we have no access to water and pools readily available and safely available, right? So then I bust out this parachute that
Oh
teachers use in
yeah,
preschool,
the really
and I'm like,
massive ones, right?
the
Yeah,
round ones
right.
where like you go like this, fling it, and there's colors, and
Or
you like
you like
tuck it
run
under your bottom,
across
and you
underneath. Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes, 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 I'll go ahead, run across screen. So I bust this out, and I'm like, I'm gonna need all of you to stand up, and it was just it was like this artful representation of waves of grief. So everyone held onto the parachute, and I would just tell a story of just walking through a grocery store. And, grief can hit at the grocery store.
Hmm.
And then I had to do like little waves of grief. And oh, yeah, a little softer, a little bit more poetic, a little slower, a little slower. We're just going to go to the grocery store, pick up a few items. I'm feeling better today. I'm able to get out of bed, get the groceries for the kids. It's gonna be right. And then you get to this aisle, you get to the cereal aisle. Oh no, that one cereal you used to buy 4 boxes of, 4 boxes, because your one child only ate that cereal. It's right there staring in front of you. But you don't need to buy it anymore. What's happening to your grief, right? The waves are more intense, they're stronger for no apparent reason, but very apparent reasons to yourself. You start crying. You start crying. The waves are hitting big and strong, but you're in the middle of a grocery aisle. And guess what? Lo and behold, there's a coupon. You could have even saved money. So it's like that whole journey when you see the waves of grief, having that as you tell your story, it's like a visual representation and illustration of what's really happening. So that's what we mean, like comes over you, right? Waves kind of come over you. It could be in a rhythm, like in the ocean, there's some sort of rhythm, or it's like completely takes you off guard. Um, so that was a really fun, like artful way of creating. If I had like, you know, silk fabric, I
Mm.
think it would look really pretty, but with parachute. But like, I feel like there are so many things you can do to translate that story, right? Or that analogy, which is very visual if you can imagine. But for a lot of us that don't know what waves feel like, we need something kinesthetic. And because you can see the waves, it's also quite visual. It's very kinesthetic. And because you're telling a story, it's also auditory. So you have all these things that are happening at once that kids, adults, various learning styles can gravitate towards something because the objective is to make it as multimodal as possible. Multimodal, like different modalities, incorporated into one shared activity experience, right? So that while someone can't follow the words, maybe they're pre-readers, then you speak the words out, right? You describe them. So it's really at the end of the day, Grace, it's really about hospitality. It's really about how to
Wow.
make the experience of the gathering hospitable
Yeah.
to everyone coming. Because that's how you would run like an event. That's how you would run like a family gathering, right? Like what kind of food will you have? What are everyone's
Mm.
dietary restrictions, allergies? You ask those things so that everyone feels welcome, seen, and heard. And then the activities and then the stations or the areas to mingle, the entertainment. You would want to know, are there special needs? Are there accessibility needs? Are there mobility needs? You will make sure of all those things. And you'll make sure like the entertainment, the speeches, whatever kind of event you're throwing, that everyone feels they are invited personally and that everyone is having a comfortable time. So for me, I feel like grief support is really an extension of
That's
hospitality.
amazing.
It's really, that's what it is. And growing up in a restaurant, it has an even like stronger connection to me, um, because in food and beverage, that's all you do. You make the customer feel comfortable, welcome, and taken care of, right? That's what it all is. If you have a grief support group, if you have an art class, if you have a senior club gathering, you want everyone to feel comfortable, seen, and taken care of. So to me, if you distill it, that's what we're doing. Learning style aside, cognitive emotional development aside, those are very specific technical terms for helping someone feel taken care of. And you're going to find out what that is because you want them to feel taken care of and you want to take care of them in the time that you're together. So I feel like that's what it really boiled down to, like these 2 days of training filled with like, a lot of nuggets of theories, development of children, their grief responses, etc. But when you put them all together like that, you wear like your professional hat, your personal hat, with your parent hat, with your like teacher hat, with all those hats you have on. I think the more we practice hospitality is when it starts to sink in. Like, okay, well, we have 5 of them who are 5 years old, 2 of them with special needs, like 3 of them that really need their mamas nearby. Like, let's really think about how to plan this so that everyone does not even have a good time, but everyone feels a belonging, I think.
Yeah, so this is amazing. I think I'm going to keep that line when you're saying this grief support, this education is an extension of hospitality. Yeah.
This blank, right? This blank,
So
fill in the
I
blank.
want to verify what I was taught. So I did my master's of creative writing in Cambridge, and then I did a teaching certificate for 1 more year. And I was so
Yeah.
blown away by my master's program and how multimodal, how accessible, how, as a neurodivergent learner, I was seeing my colleague who had dyslexia pump out some of the best work, and there were accommodations for things like that. And we learned in the teaching certificate, like I was trying to break down why my master's program felt safer than a lot of other creative writing. Like usually creative writing workshops are the ones that I've been to have been fairly hospitable, but there have been notorious workshops for being rigid and inaccessible to people, very elitist. And I was like, if I'm at an elitist institution that's not doing that, what are they doing? And one of the mentions that my professors had or tutor had was like coffee and cake, tea and cake, which is a very British thing. Tea and cake is essential at every meeting. And she's like, tea and cake is
Yes.
where all the discussions after your seminars or your workshops occur. It's like where the continuation of people digesting their ideas exists. And because in creative writing, people are writing about trauma all the time, whereby poetry, fiction, nonfiction, plays, they're writing about things that they would never tell anybody else in the world. So like we were
Yeah.
able to learn that hospitality component because some of us who are teaching, we're never going to be professors at a university. They might do like a community writers workshop for different ages, for different reasons. And if you're in a library community setting, as well as if you're in a university teaching undergrads, like the premise is the same. Like, she's like, always think about how to put in tea and cake into yeah, because it's already such a scary environment to enter into. And so it's something that I tried even doing with my Chinese adult ESL students was I tried to take them to their first, some of them had lived in America for 3 years, and still hadn't been to an American restaurant outside of McDonald's because they were scared of using English and scared of partaking in a community and a cuisine that was not theirs. So I took them to Freddy's and we walked there and we got chicken wings
Freddy's is a place that sells hot
and
dogs,
pizza.
burgers, and
And
pizza.
it was a fascinating cultural experience for them. And I don't think, I still don't think the overachieving side of me conducted that lesson well, other than getting them outside of their comfort zone to go down the street and eat something. But it kind of came to, over these years, my mom, the tables have turned, and my mom was saying to me when I was frustrated about teaching English to seniors who don't do homework and wondering, which was really a reflection of my own insecurity in life as a young adult, was she was like, you don't realize how hard it is to be a fresh immigrant in America, because they lost their entire former life and community, and they entered into a new space with a lot of unknowns where they're still learning how to communicate, and they have to think about taking care of their kids and getting a job. And I think she was trying to signal to me without the words because she was learning to communicate to me like, Grace, these people are grieving, and you need to be more empathetic and compassionate as much as you're trying to empower them with the skills for them to like level up in American society. Like, really, they're there to find friends and to find like companionship while they're grieving, right? And I think
Yeah. And the bonus is if they learn some English.
and eat some chicken wings, right?
Whereas like Miss Wong, Miss Grace is thinking, oh no. The primary focus is
Right,
learning how to write a
exactly.
resume.
That was really my primary focus. And it's now looking back that if I also understand myself, I think you can reflect on this and then we'll end it here. I watched a video yesterday on productivity for my personality type, and she said something that she was quote.
I just have to laugh because you just talked about how you're highly overachieving. And that led you to want senior citizens and like fresh immigrants to write resumes having
English.
very little English knowledge. And then now you're saying I was just watching a video on a weekend of how to be even more productive.
So
I just have to reflect that too. That
well,
I
humorous.
a little
It's
humorous.
great. This is yeah, I know. I feel so seen.
But completely
Yeah, I
aligned
know.
with what you just
This is
said.
this is oh my gosh, I can't. We could talk about this later. This is the humorous quirk about myself. So she was saying that productivity is not a management of skills and like time, it's more of a management of, it's more understanding your emotions. And I was like, wow. What do you think of?
You know when you start saying emotions.
Yeah, wait,
Rebecca
so
goes
what do you
kinda,
think?
"Wow."
I mean, this was a productivity video, so she had her bent of what she was trying to use that quote in context for. But what do you think of that thought?
Well, I can talk about it in a variety of contexts, but I think like when we talk about in the grief context, I think a lot of us adults, mostly adults, because the kids learn through their adults, is we have an expectation of productivity of our grief journey. By a certain time, we almost think it's linear. By a certain time, we believe it should be easier. By a certain time, believe that we should have been able to cope more. by a certain time, I should be able to go back to the hospital room now. I should be able to pass by a hospital without crying by now. We have all these expectations because we need to be productive. And I think another thing we talked about in training is that a lot of times grievers might feel like they've been unproductive too long, meaning they didn't produce work, they didn't contribute to the family, they didn't make money, whatever it is. They've taken 3 months of leave, uh, probably most of it unpaid because they just couldn't go back to work, and they couldn't like bring the kids to all those practices. They leaned on their neighbors, their friends. So a few months have passed. They need to get back on their productivity wagon, right? Like I let too much time go by. Let me catch up. If not catch up, then overcompensate. So we have 500 balls we're juggling because we want to be as productive as possible. But what we don't know is the feelings and emotions that come in trying to juggle all that productivity, expecting the same rate of return as if nothing happened, expecting the same rate of efficiency as if a tragedy didn't just occur, expecting that we're able to
Yeah.
move at the same speed, carrying the same weight, but actually more, and have no issues, no obstacles. It should just be smooth, just like it used to be before whatever event or crisis happened. And that's unrealistic, one. But yes, it has to do with management of those feelings. And how productive are you in managing the feeling is not actually how quick are you in suppressing. I think productivity sounds like efficiency, sounds like time savings for a lot of people. But for me, it doesn't work that way because like I used to say things like the most loving thing to do for yourself or for other people might not be the most time or cost effective because it might take longer. It might take a few times. It might take a lot of redoing. But is that not productive? When the quality of your understanding of your feeling deepens, isn't that a form of productivity? So if we only define productivity as how much you accomplish in a time frame, that's productivity. Or is that efficiency? How quickly can you get something done? But then let's look at the quality of the thing that you're producing. Is it the best quality? You can be productive, you can produce. Sure, we can all produce things. Is it of the utmost best quality? So if the production is grief support, if the production is sitting with my own sadness, it's not going to be quick. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Like if we make that the only marker, I think we're missing the point of how we are as humans. But because we have a very pain adverse, pain intolerant, and efficiency, productivity centered lifestyle and society, especially in an urban setting, I think that confuses us into what productivity means. So, all those feelings that come up, you can put up on the side and continue what you do because you have to do it, yes, but do you come back and revisit that? Because then those feelings and the management of those feelings, that process is not productive at all. If you can manage those feelings and still produce, then you really get to like your natural productivity. Because we also can't assume every single day is apples to apples. We can't assume every project is the same because you have a different team, you have a different context, you have a different amount of resources, and over time those things change. So I think it's easy to compare that way, and it seems easier to measure, but I don't think it's humanly
Hmm.
realistic. That's my thought on that thought, Grace.
I I
You'll always you always see me like slowing down. You always see me like, hey, wait a minute. But in my personal life,
you know,
I'm very
that's
used to like getting things done, 5 million things, juggling things. So what I'm saying isn't like things that I've mastered because I haven't,
yeah,
because
gosh.
I've been taught in a very efficient way. I've been taught in a very
Right, right.
suppress your feelings way. what I've learned is, okay, how do we disrupt that? Because those feelings, it was efficient to suppress them for a while, like a few decades, right? But they kind of burrow and curl and wiggle up. And then I've never learned to properly sit with them. And now, because of that, I am not productive because even today, going to a health appointment, lots of emotions, was not accustomed to sitting with it. I was not productive, but I was pretty productive in sitting with them though. So I think they're different angles and sides, one to every story, different angles and sides to how we approach things and what the outcome is that we want. And if we really think about it just a little bit longer and question, is that really the outcome I want? To be able to get out of here as quickly as I want? Like I was talking about, do I really want happy children? Is that what I want? Happy children? Yeah, it could be what I want and it sounds nice, but that's unrealistic. My kids are not always going to be happy. And I think deeply enough and I think long enough and pause and go, I want emotionally secure children. That's what I want. And if they're emotionally secure, they might lead happier lives, happier in the sense that they'll be content, they'll be confident in themselves and confident in their relationships, even when it's unhappy. So, like, I don't know, there's just so much time for reflection, Grace. There's never enough time to talk about it all.
Which,
So, there goes
right,
another
we've
podcast.
well, I just want to thank you for your reflections. I have a lot to chew on regarding that. And hopefully, this served as an encouragement for caregivers and professionals who are working with uh, creating awareness of social emotional learning, in whatever capacity you're in. And to
Even to
ourselves,
ourselves.
right. And I think
Naturally.
we all know that
Yeah.
our personal inner work reflects back in the way that we serve others. And it isn't unproductive for us to sit with our own selves in the discomfort, so that it's the lie that if we suppress it, that will be more efficient, productive, serviceable to people. But really, you're hinting at all of us that it's quite the opposite. And okay, it's challenging, and it's okay to be like, I am working through that right now, um, as we grow in and being more human.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
we will continue this conversation some other time. But thank you, audience, for
We will.
yeah, go ahead.
I said we will continue this and we'll always continue this. I don't think it's
One
like
and done.
this is the episode. The episode on feelings, and then this is the episode on
No, one and
awareness,
done.
and then we're done. It's like a continual, and it's not even a ladder. Like there's no ladder because who knows where we're supposed to go. It's just like oh, okay, we're in like this like Jello pool together.
We should do an episode on Inside
Trying to-
Out. It's something I'm gonna write down for her. Yeah.
Sure. Oh, before I go, I want to show you this is our ending piece. Okay, we're gonna let people sit on this artwork that we made at training in Idaho.
Oh my goodness. What?
Right?
Oh.
Doesn't it? Well, like Museum of Modern Art.
Yeah.
I feel like we got to talk about this next
do.
time. If I don't talk about it in like Instagram,
Yeah.
which I might.
Oh my gosh.
So, catch up on Instagram maybe.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Say bye. Oh, we
Yes.
say thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.